Good morning. Today I'm talking to Eddy Boas and also to his son Phil Boas. Eddy is a Holocaust survivor. He survived Bergen-Belsen camp. So Eddy, if you just want to, as I said before we started this, I want to talk a small bit about the history because that's important, but I want to focus also on what we can do going forward, fighting anti-Semitism and looking at the present and the future. And I want to say this quote as well, which comes from your granddaughter, Eddy. To improve the future, we have to learn from the history. I think that's a great quote. So Eddy, if you just want to give us a brief overview on who you are and mention your book as well, because I read it. It's a great book. It's called I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. So yeah, and if you just want to give us a quick overview of who you are, who's Eddy.
Yeah, no problems. I was born in The Hague, Holland, on the 26th of January 1940. And of course, the Germans invaded Holland 3 months and 15 days later. The Dutch fought them bravely. My father was in the Dutch army fighting the Germans, but it only lasted 5 days. So I was only a baby when the war broke out. My mother was where we lived in The Hague with my brother, who was born in 1935. My father came back from the front line to The Hague a few days later. He had never seen me before because he was in army boot camp. And we lived under occupation in Holland till we got deported to Westerbork, which was the transit camp that Dutch Jews used for Jews to go to the concentration camps. We were one of the last people in The Hague that were deported. We were deported on the 28th of September 1943 to Westerbork, and then on the 1st of February on to Bergen-Belsen. During that period, everybody knows about the restrictions on Jews. They couldn't go on trams, buses, etc. Couldn't go into parks, couldn't spend any money, couldn't own a business. So during that 3-year period, my mother was the only one who went to the shops on certain days when she was allowed to get some food. My father stayed at home. He was a pretty big fella. And we survived by, I won't say good fortune because I don't believe in luck, but by basically the smartness of my mother, her life experience. She worked as a delivery for my grandfather, who had a fruit business. And she was the first woman in Holland to drive a truck. So all the policemen in The Hague knew my mother. And they'd seen her, they always said, "Hello, Susie," which was her name, Sarah, Susie. And one day she took my brother for a walk and myself to go and buy some warm clothing. And she bumped into Derek. And he asked her where she was going. She told him going to a shop called The Waal. And as we got out of the shop, Derek was waiting there. And he said to Susie, "Don't look up, don't talk, hold boy's hand and push the pram with Eddy in it." And then we walked past a roadblock manned by Dutch Nazis who called out to my mother, to Derek, "Good catch there, Derek." Young woman with 2 children. He took us home, stood outside our place all night, and that's one safe we had.
Okay, and Derek, he was a police officer, I believe. Am I right?
Sorry?
Derek, he was a police officer? He was a cop?
Yeah, Derek was a police officer.
Yeah.
And the point I'm making when I do my presentations, I talk about the Dutch police, how bad they were, and they were. They were offering money to criminals and anybody to catch Jews, and then they would, the bloke would caught them. So there's good and bad in all walks of life, and Derek was a good copper.
Yeah, I know the reward they would get for catching Jews, I think, was 7 guilders and 50 cents. I mean, sometimes you wonder what prices can you put on a life. Apparently, that's what they thought was the most appropriate price. Yeah, that's a sad indictment of the country we were both born in, Eddy. So, but yeah, going forward to the moment. It's not at the moment, I think. There is a rise again in anti-Semitism, but I think it has always been there, but maybe a bit more dormant, but it seems to be a bit more prevalent nowadays. So recently you did a presentation for the Australian Parliament, I believe. So can you, about
New South Wales Parliament.
okay, yeah,
Not
yeah.
New South Wales.
Okay, but so can you give us a quick over what was the interest in your story? How did they react to your presentation?
I've been there. My drive at the moment is Holocaust education.
Yeah,
Needs to be taught at schools, at universities, through the history subject. And I've been talking to the Minister of I'm talking about the state of New South Wales. I live in Sydney. I've been talking to the Minister about introducing it. I had a meeting with the Premier of the state and also the Whip of the state. So, I'm doing this without any Jewish organization behind me. I'm doing it as an individual. I've been well received by all of them. I'm still corresponding with all of them. And it came about, I said I would like to do a presentation on Holocaust education. And they have a theatre in the Parliament. And they offered me the theatre. I promoted it. It holds 164 people. And we booked it out within 2 weeks from both Jewish, non-Jewish, and 2 schools sent students there as well. So, and it went really well. We were supposed to go for 90 minutes. We went for actually 2 hours and nobody left. The questions were good in Q&A. I had my say about some of the Jewish organizations who I believe handle this anti-Semitism too easy as far as I'm concerned. I made the point that nobody ever talks about the fact that the Holocaust also include, gypsies, handicapped people. You mentioned, sorry,
the Freemasons were targeted, and also Jehovah's Witnesses, of course, and then the LGBT community, the biggest groups that were targeted. So yeah, and I think what kind of scared me, especially this week, when you hear again of an attack on the Jehovah's Witness society in Hamburg. So it appears to me that all the groups that were targeted in the 1930s, 1940s are slowly being targeted again. So that kind of, well, I won't say scares me, but it worries me. I think we're still at the point where we can do something about it. I think that's why it's good to have chats like this. I just want to go to your son Phil for a moment, Annie. So, Phil, how was it growing up with a Holocaust survivor? Because you're deemed to be a second generation. So I mean, we don't hear too often the voice of the children of survivors. So can you just give us a quick idea?
Yeah, look, growing up, in all honesty, with Dad, sort of heard very little about any of the Holocaust or any of the situations from my father at that time. And I think my grandmother was the one who, as I got into my sort of later or mid to later teenage years, she used to talk quite openly about it to myself, my brother, and in all honesty, it's scary to hear those stories firsthand, from her. The amount of times that she was, had guns held to her head. She told the story where, a German soldier had her up against the wall, put the gun to her head, pulled the trigger. The gun didn't go off. She ran away. She talked about how in the camps, she used to scrounge food, keep the family alive. She was an incredibly, strong woman, so hearing those stories firsthand, it has an effect on you in a sense of understanding sort of the struggles that your family went through. I think from my dad's point of view, as I said, I think he would probably tell you he didn't talk about it really in his younger years at all. It was something I think that he pushed to the back of his head. And it was something, I think it really hit home for me when I had children. And, obviously I understand that the horrors and speaking to my grandmother, but really sort of understanding when I had a son who was about my father's age, looking at him and realizing what my father went through at that age was, it's horrific. And the thing that got them through that was just the strength of really my grandmother and my grandfather, and my uncle, my older uncle, dad's sort of older brother. The fact that they were able to sort of endure that and get through it is amazing. The strength that they had, the fortitude that they had. I don't think anybody, can really. There's no way you can put yourself in those shoes. You cannot understand it. But the strength that those people, had that went through it was incredible. But as I said, sort of during my dad's younger years, he never really talked about it, but he had and still has, a drive and a focus, which, I'm incredibly proud of and wish I could match in some way, shape, or form. But, he always has a focus, always has a drive, and that's what keeps him moving.
Yeah, man, it's that. I know that because I spoke to your father before. Yeah, it is. I truly admire that, and it's typically you say that when you had children yourself, you start looking for getting more into the story of it. I'm more or less the same. I was looking. Well, I'm not Jewish. Well, I'm a Christian, but my father was Catholic. But his father was executed by the Nazis during World War II as well, and that had an impact on him. And therefore, that impact translated on me as well. But it's only when I had kids I started looking for answers. So yeah, I can identify with that. So, but Eddie, going back to you and your plans for the future, I suppose. You said you'd like to see the Holocaust being put in the history curriculum, and I totally agree with you. But how do you think we can achieve that? How, because there's still at the moment, still such a lot of Holocaust distortion and denial going on, and seems to be getting worse and worse as well. So how do you think we could achieve that? If you have any ideas on that?
I believe it needs to be counted. We had a few cases here in private schools a few months ago, and I rang up what they call the Board of Deputies, which is a group of Jewish people who do a lot of good and take care of that. But when I saw the interviews, they were more apologetic than saying, "Hey, this should never happen." They say it should never happen, but it wasn't said in a way why it should never happen. The reason why it should never happen, as I told them, was if you talk to these kids and ask them, do you have a gay friend? Am I allowed to say gay friend? I'm not sure if that's one of the words you're allowed to say or not. If you have a gay friend, put up your hand. And probably half a dozen will put up their hand. And then you say, do you know that your friend would have been murdered by Hitler? And then you go to the next one. Do you have a handicapped or mentally ill brother or relative? And you go through the same thing. And then those kids will start to come to grips with it eventually, if they told this more enough. I had, after the interview, my club monitors, quite a few of the non-Jewish people came to this presentation. They come up to me the following week and said they'd never heard, they always thought the Holocaust was just about the Jews. And the cameraman who took the videos, I had a cup of coffee with him last Friday, and he said to me out of the blue, you know what, I never knew that the Holocaust was not just about the Jews. That's what we've got to be told.
Yeah, I think the lesson what we would have to teach is tolerance and respect for others. I think that's kind of missing at the moment. We're at the point again where everything, if you kind of disagree or have a slightly different point of view, and if you're being trying to be truthful, you're being shut down. There's a lot of I don't like to use the word cancel culture, but if you hear that some books are being banned again, to me that resonates with 1933, where books were being burned. So yeah, I think that's my fear. We're at that point again now where we have a similar situation how it was in the Weimar Republic in Germany in 1930. So yeah, I think we have to do everything we can stop to do that. At the moment, it's not just Germany; it's more like a global thing. I think social media is helping with not helping, but is responsible for this as well, because everything is immediate now. And that can be a danger. It can be a benefit, but it can be in danger as well, of course. So just on your presentation you did for the was it the New South Wales Parliament?
Government.
Yeah. Have to be any follow-ups by the government? Did they come back to you and say, Eddy, this is great, we're going to do this and this now? Because...
yeah, absolutely. The unfortunate thing is we have a state election in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party are in power at the moment, and according to all the pundits, they're not going to win. So I have to start all over again with the Labour Party if that's the case. So I hope the Liberal Party wins, obviously. But can I just come back to the social media thing? And I think Sarah Jane brought that up in her, and she talked about that Kane West, or Yay, whatever the bloke's name is, how he has got millions of followers, and the kids follow him, and whatever he says, they believe. But why isn't anybody, that bloke who interviewed him, did an interview with him in the first place, the English fella, I can't think of his name now.
Piers Morgan.
Yeah, why didn't he say to him what happened to the colored people? Once the Jews were gone, who were next, do you reckon? The colored people. Hitler put up camps for blue-eyed blonde women and blue-eyed blonde fellows to breed the perfect race. Yeah. Why don't the people tell this guy West that you would have been next? And that's a fact.
Yeah, and because Germany also had colonies in Africa, and the African Germans, as they call them, they were sterilized to make sure that there wouldn't be any continuation of that. So, and that's often forgotten. That's just part of the Holocaust as well, by the way. That's often forgotten or not talked about. It's because it's not a popular thing to say, I suppose. No. Phil, I believe you're in London at the moment. So do you see anything in the UK? Because I see there's, luckily, I have to say, in Ireland, it's not as bad yet. There isn't that much. People are a bit more tolerant here of others, and we because there's a Irish saying, 1,000 welcomes, and it's still there, even though it's kind of getting a bit less. So, but I've seen reports in the UK where there's some issues with anti-Semitism, and even when you look at the current situation, with just a simple example with Gary Lineker, he's speaking his mind. He sees what the government is doing there with all their policies. What are your thoughts on that, Phil, if you don't mind?
It's a difficult one. I personally, haven't seen any, anti-Semitism in the UK. But you're right. Does happen. The Gary Lineker case, I think, it's an interesting one. I think sometimes people say what they say for a shock value without understanding what it means to people. I think across all religious groups, there's elements of, there's too much friction and fraction between a lot of religious groups at the moment. I think the points earlier, people just need to learn to get along and tolerate. People have different beliefs. People always have, for thousands and thousands of years. We've got to accept those beliefs that people have, tolerate those beliefs, and let people, as long as it's not getting in the way of other people's lives, people should be able to get on with their own lives and the beliefs that they have. I think in the media now, with these, with celebrities, like Kanye West or Gary Lineker, they need to think before they make these comments, because I don't think they really understand the depth of the Holocaust and the people it affected and the different groups it affected. Because I think if they did, as you and my father have been saying, they wouldn't make those comments. So I think the education part is just so important, not just from a school level, but I think at a level up through society.
Yeah, I even think that the Holocaust should be taught at a primary level. Start them when they're young. But yeah, I do agree. People just have to be careful on what they say, and we have to tolerate each other. We have to be able to live it together. I mean, I would like to live in a world where everyone is like me, because God love us all. No one
I
wants
wish
to.
I
No,
do.
no one wants to go there. But yeah, no, I think it's important to have a debate, and that's what's often missing. It's no longer talked about. It's statements, and it's often just memes on social media and used as a fact, which it isn't. So
There's another point where if you ask somebody how many Jews are there in this world, they wouldn't have a clue.
yeah,
There are 8 billion people in this world, and only 16 million are Jews, 0.002%.
yeah.
If you're really serious, are they going to control the world? And that's what everybody's saying.
Yeah, I know, and that's and that, yeah, it's just ignorance, kind of that breeds stupidity. I suppose so. Yeah, I
But
mean,
my point is, sorry, Derek. My point is, why don't people bring that out and speak about it?
I mean,
Then people learn.
if people just look at facts, they know. But people that's a problem at the moment. People are no longer interested in facts. People like to see headlines, and they go by that, and they don't feel there's no need anymore for a full story. And that's how I often feel. People just, oh yeah, it's that's what it says, so it's right. Yeah. Eddy, thanks for having a chat with me again, and Phil, thanks for joining as well. Interesting lads, and I'm sure we'll be talking again, because this is a story this is an issue that is close to my heart and yours as well, Eddy, and I'm sure that's not going to go away. So thank you for that, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks very much,
Thank
Derek.
you.
Thanks for inviting me, and talk to you next time.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Derek. Bye.